or our DNA. Part of the intuitive sense, Akashic records, and being able to peer into all humans' Akashic records actually happens to reside right there. Was that unique to Edgare Cacye? No. The truth of the fact...
Where I was going.
Pardon?
Well, that's where I was going. I mean, I don't believe it's something that was unique to Cacye. Apparently, it's a channel and a way that we can all tune into that. And, of course, if this is within us, then everyone would have access to that anyway.
Absolutely. The interesting thing is, Chad, is I was born, essentially, as is absolutely every single human, and I believe Edgare Cacye also. We are born with our intuitive sense wide open, and it operates perfectly fine until we hit the age of about 5, maybe 6 years old, and then it begins to shut down. Why? Logic. Ladies and gentlemen, the intuitive sense is not a logical context. In fact, I can guarantee you that logic and the intuitive sense will absolutely not agree. They will fight each other, which is what distorts the idea of the intuitive sense. Everybody has a, quote, third eye. What's the third eye? That's the seal in the forehead. It's the sixth chakra and the higher attribute of physicality. But when I say physicality, that's almost a misnomer. It's the higher attribute of achievement of overcoming physical sense to arrive at the intuitive sense, the higher ideal or idea of learning. And everybody, 1, it was born with you. 2, you outgrew it. 3, it can be reconnected. And it's not all that difficult to do it. Chad, let me ask you a question. You remember way back when the covered wagons were running around and you were in high school?
No, I was born in 73.
Oh, so you were pre-covered wagons.
Exactly.
Oh, no, wait, that would be post. Post-covered wagons. Do you remember when you would be doing, like, taking an exam or a test, and you would write down an answer, and then you would second-guess, if you will, the answer, and you would erase it and put down another answer?
Yep.
Did you ever notice how many times that you did that the first thing that you wrote down was correct?
Yes, I can.
Okay.
Yeah, I've seen that.
All right. What answered the question for you was your intuitive sense.
Yeah.
What second-guessed the question was your logic.
Logic.
The analyzation, the part of us that we, in what we could call our present era, reside or rely on, if you will, the most. One of the things I love to share with people is look at the first 4 letters of analyze.
You know.
Absolutely. We analyze until we become anal. And what happens is intuition is not a left brain function. It is completely and totally a function of right brain. And when you rely on left brain, yes, you may deal with material reality better, which is ironically doubtful. And if you're interested, I can explain that one. But when you rely on right brain, or the intuitive side of mind, you will tend to be more accurate. Now, one of the things I have to say with everybody out there, look, I'm known as an intuitive. I use my intuitive sense for people all over the world, no matter where they reside. Shanghai, China, St. Petersburg, Russia, Sydney, Australia, Sao Paulo, Brazil, literally all over the world. And what I do is I use my intuitive sense to assist them in understanding their lives and their circumstance. And here's the funny thing. If you were to call me tomorrow and say, Stephen, I'd like to use your expertise, and you would ask me how it works, my answer to you would be simply this, that I'm going to share with you everything that makes no sense to me.
Okay, that makes sense to me.
Oh, now you scared me. And people go, what? And I go, yeah, listen, if it makes sense to me, then that means it applies to me. And what I'm doing is I'm talking with you about everything you don't want to know, because I'm talking with you about myself. I'm not talking with you about you. So what happens with a lot of people is when they get intuitive hits, and it makes no sense, they begin to analyze it, and it makes less sense. So it's much more difficult to figure out and to work with. the fact of the matter is, the intuitive sense is one of the simplest things that we have that we can operate with as long as you really don't attempt to use it for yourself. Why? Well, you are too closely ensconced in what you're attempting to intuit unless you are really, really good at it.
Exactly. I want to ask you this, though. You said that intuition is primarily a function of the right brain, or the right side of the brain. I've often wondered if there was some, I don't know, something about them being equal, about using them in unison, that even the other side of your brain, the logic and the reasoning sections have to be in balance in order for intuition to work, or do you think it's just primarily those that are advanced in the right brain, your artists, your musicians, your creative, insane people?
Creative, insane people. Yeah, I love that word. I remember the first time I had a psych professor back in college just look at me and go, I want to kick you out of this class, boy.
You're asking too many questions, son.
No, all I did was look at him and say, excuse me, professor, is sanity insanity, is sanity insanity, or is insanity sanity? And he looked at me and just frowned like, oh, no, I've got another one.
Another one of them.
Yeah. And you got to remember that was back in the early 70s, late 60s. That was the era that it was in. I believe in reality, Chad, and I don't know if I believe is the correct word because it reminds me of the redneck comedians, and I like that anyway. So I believe that we are whole-brained in reality, and we attempt to segment and separate. And I believe that's an error of humankind. There's nothing separate in the world in reality. I mean, even though you and I, mileage-wise, are about 750 miles apart, the fact of the matter is you and I are connected. Anybody listening to the show, no matter where you sit in this country, we are connected energetically, spiritually speaking, but we tend to see division. That's logical mind throwing us another illusion, showing separation. One of the things that I'd love to share with people is, Chad, is this. How can you see, let's say, a desk, a tree, anything of that nature? How can you see it? Simply because...
you recognize it.
No. You see it predominantly because there's nothing around it. You see it because of the open space. Absolutely. So what does that have to do with that? What does that have to do with being connected? We are connected through the openness of the universe and the openness of self to the universe. Therein lies our direct connection to all things. The imaginary space between us. The idea of intuition is the idea of an imaginary space. And
wow, you're blowing me away because Mozart or maybe it was Beethoven, I may be wrong. Anyone listening can correct me, but I remember some famous composer saying it's not where you put the notes, it's where you put the silence.
Yes.
And what you're saying is the exact same thing.
Absolutely. You couldn't hear me without silence, and leading to the idea of the intuitive sense that you, as any individual, I won't say must or should or need, but establish the idea of a silent mind, and as the Tibetans put it, then you get to hear the roar of silence. The roar. Roar. Of silence. That brings up a point that a question I want to ask you here next. But speaking of being connected, we do have a caller on the line. I'd like to take a call from the 325 area code. You are on live with Stephen Hairfield and Chad Lilley. This is a line from the night. This is the Workshop Radio. Where are you calling us from?
I'm calling from Texas. I called last time he was doing readings on air. My name is Andrew. I'm in the chat room.
Hey, Andrew. How are you? I remember you. You were curious about how intuition could work without eyes. Is that correct?
I was I exactly forgot what the ability, what you were saying to me about being more upfront with the information. Uh-huh. And I've been doing that more often with the information.
Okay.
I do have a couple of questions, but I don't want to take up your time or anything.
Please.
The last time I talked to you, I was telling you I was training with a teacher online who's a psychic and a medium. I'm still working with her. I've been trying to use my intuitive abilities through another method.